On June 28, 1914, in a narrow street in Sarajevo, a single gunshot would echo across the entire European continent. Within weeks, millions would be marching to war. Within months, the entire world would be consumed in flames. This is the story of how one assassination triggered the deadliest conflict humanity had ever seen. I'm your host, and this is Talemaster Legends Series. Welcome. What you're about to learn isn't just about a bullet fired in Bosnia. It's about how the entire structure of Europe, centuries of alliances, rivalries, imperial ambitions, and nationalist fervor was balanced on a knife's edge. One moment changed everything. In this episode, we're uncovering the hidden rivalries that divided Europe into two hostile camps, the Balkan Wars that foreshadowed the coming catastrophe, the exact reasons Gavrilo Princip pulled the trigger that day, how a regional crisis became a continental war in just 37 days, why peace was impossible once the dominoes started falling, and the missed opportunities to stop it before millions died. By the end of this video, you'll understand not just what happened on June 28, 1914, but why it was inevitable. And more importantly, you'll see how the seeds of this war were planted decades earlier in the ambitions of empires and the hearts of desperate men. Stay with us. This is the true story of the spark that ignited the Great War. To understand the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, we first need to understand Europe itself in the early 1900s. And the Europe of 1914 was a continent balanced on a knife's edge, divided into two hostile blocks, each watching the other with suspicion and fear. On one side, you had what was called the Triple Alliance. At its heart stood the German Empire, led by Kaiser Wilhelm II. Germany was young as a nation, unified only in 1871 under Otto von Bismarck, but it had risen with stunning speed. Its industry was booming, its military was formidable, its ambitions were boundless. Germany was allied with Austria-Hungary, a rambling, multi-ethnic empire that controlled vast territories in Central and Eastern Europe. Austria-Hungary was the second largest nation in Europe, but it was also fragile. Inside its borders lived Poles, Czechs, Romanians, Yugoslavians, Hungarians, and countless other ethnic groups. It was held together not by shared culture or language, but by the iron will of the Habsburg dynasty. Completing the alliance was Italy, a Mediterranean power that had only recently unified and wanted to prove itself on the world stage. On the opposite side stood the Triple Entente, Britain, the master of a global empire upon which the sun never set. France, ancient and proud, still smarting from its humiliating defeat by Germany in 1871. And Russia, vast and mysterious, the great continental power that stretched from Europe to the Pacific. These two blocks, these two visions of Europe's future, were locked in what historians call a security dilemma. Each side believed it was acting defensively, preparing itself against threats from the other. But from the other side's perspective, every preparation looked like aggression, every alliance looked like a threat, every arms buildup was a provocation. This was the world's first arms race in the modern sense. Dreadnought battleships, new artillery, growing armies, all spiraling upward. Germany felt encircled, squeezed between France to the west and Russia to the east. Britain felt threatened by Germany's rising naval power. France wanted to recover its territories it had lost in 1871, and Russia wanted to expand southward into the Balkans and the Mediterranean. And in the middle of all this tension, there was the Balkans, a region that would be called the powder keg of Europe, not by chance, but by the inexorable logic of history. Let me explain why. For 4 centuries, the Ottoman Empire had ruled the Balkans. Turkey, as it was called, controlled vast territories in southeastern Europe, including Bosnia, Herzegovina, Serbia, Bulgaria, and more. But by the early 1900s, the Ottoman Empire was dying. It was weak, corrupt, and crumbling from within. As it weakened, the great powers of Europe circled like vultures, each hoping to grab territory and influence. Among the Ottoman territories, Serbia was emerging as a new force. It was a young nation, freed from Ottoman rule in 1878, and it was growing stronger. Serbia had a dream, to unite all South Slavs under one flag, to create a great South Slavic nation, a Yugoslavia. This dream was called Soul Slavic nationalism, and it burned in the hearts of Serbs everywhere. But there was a problem. Many of the South Slavs Serbia wanted to unite with were already ruled by Austria-Hungary, particularly in Bosnia and Herzegovina. These territories had been annexed by Austria-Hungary in 1908, officially making them part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. For the Serbian nationalists, this was unbearable. Bosnia and Herzegovina, they believed, should be part of a great South Slavic state, not part of a foreign empire. And in Bosnia, there were many Bosnian Serbs who felt the same way. They dreamed of union with Serbia. They resented Austria-Hungarian rule. They were willing to fight for their freedom. This was the flashpoint. Austria-Hungary saw Serbia and Serbian nationalism as a direct threat to its existence. If the South Slavic nationalities within the empire started demanding independence, the whole multi-ethnic state would fall apart. So Vienna took a hardline approach. Austria-Hungary took a hardline approach to suppress Serbian nationalism, to intimidate Serbia, to prevent any unification of the South Slavs. Now let's see how this tension exploded into open conflict. In 1912 and 1913, there were two Balkan wars. Let me quickly explain these, because they were dress rehearsals for World War I. In the First Balkan War, 1912-1913, Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro, the Balkan nations, united to drive the Ottoman Empire out of Europe, and they succeeded. The Ottoman Empire lost nearly all of its remaining European territories. The Balkans were liberated from Ottoman rule. But then, in the Second Balkan War, 1913, Bulgaria attacked Serbia over disputes about territory. This time, Serbia won, along with its allies. Serbia emerged from these wars larger, more powerful, and more confident. Austria-Hungary was alarmed, very alarmed. It saw Serbian power rising on its doorstep. It saw Serbian nationalism spreading into its own territories, and it resolved to crush Serbia before it became too powerful. This was the context in June 1914. Austria-Hungary wanted to confront Serbia. It was looking for an excuse, an opportunity, something that would justify a military intervention. Then came the opportunity they were waiting for.
Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. He was the next emperor. He was also a somewhat progressive man. He wanted to reform the empire, to perhaps give more autonomy to the ethnic minorities within it. Some historians believe that if he had lived and implemented his reforms, Austria-Hungary might have survived another generation. But he never got the chance. On June 28, 1914, Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie were visiting Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. This was a show of Austro-Hungarian power, a reminder to the Bosnian population that they belonged to the empire. Franz Ferdinand was the future emperor. His presence was meant to intimidate the local Serbian nationalists. But there was a conspiracy brewing. In Belgrade, the Serbian capital, there was a secret military society called the Black Hand. Its members were dedicated to Serbian nationalism and the liberation of South Slavs from Austro-Hungarian rule. The leader was Colonel Dragutin Dimitrijević, a high-ranking officer in the Serbian military. The Black Hand decided to assassinate Franz Ferdinand. They believed that by killing the heir to the throne, they could strike a blow for Serbian independence. They could inspire the Bosnian Serbs to rebel. They could provoke a crisis. What they didn't understand, or perhaps didn't care, was that they were about to set off a chain reaction that would engulf Europe in war. The Black Hand selected a young man named Gavrilo Princip to be part of the assassination team. Princip was only 19 years old. He was a Bosnian Serb, born in Bosnia, who had moved to Belgrade. He was passionate about Serbian nationalism. He believed in the cause. Princip and other conspirators were given weapons, bombs, and pistols, and sent to Sarajevo. They were instructed to kill Franz Ferdinand. On the morning of June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand's motorcade drove through the streets of Sarajevo. Franz Ferdinand sat in an open-topped car, beside him Sophie. They were waving to crowds. The first conspiracy attempt came early. One of the conspirators, Nedeljko Čabrinović, threw a hand grenade at the motorcade. The grenade bounced off the car and exploded underneath a following vehicle, wounding some officers. But Franz Ferdinand's car escaped and continued to the event. After a formal reception, Franz Ferdinand and Sophie were driving back through the city. They took a wrong turn. Their car slowed, and at that moment, Gavrilo Princip was standing on the street corner. Princip stepped forward. He pulled out his pistol. At close range, he fired twice. One shot struck Franz Ferdinand. The other struck Sophie. Both died within minutes. The heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne was dead, killed by a 19-year-old nationalist with a pistol and a dream of Serbian freedom. In Vienna, when the news arrived, there was shock and fury. The Austro-Hungarian government demanded answers. Who was behind this? Was the Serbian government involved? Here's what we now know from historical documents. The Serbian government had not officially ordered the assassination, but elements within the Serbian military, the Black Hand, had planned it and equipped the conspirators. The distinction was crucial, but the Austro-Hungarian government either didn't believe it or didn't care. In Vienna, the attitude hardened. Austria-Hungary saw this as its chance to crush Serbia once and for all. What happened next is called the July Crisis, 37 days of escalating tensions, ultimatums, mobilizations, and declarations of war that transformed a regional conflict into a continental war. Step 1. Austria-Hungary uses an ultimatum to Serbia. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary sent Serbia a note. It was called an ultimatum, a list of demands that Serbia must accept within 48 hours. The demands included allowing Austro-Hungarian officials into Serbia to investigate the assassination, suppressing all Austrian propaganda, and dissolving Serbian nationalist organizations. Some of the demands were deliberately designed to be unacceptable. Austria-Hungary wanted to provoke Serbia to refusing, giving it a justification for war. On July 25, 1914, Serbia rejected the ultimatum. Serbian leaders believed accepting it would mean surrendering their national sovereignty. How could a foreign power investigate crimes within Serbian territory? How could Serbia suppress all nationalism? It was intolerable. Step 2. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Now, here's where the alliance system becomes critical. The rest of Europe didn't have to get involved in this regional conflict, but it did. Step 3. Russia mobilizes. When Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, Russia faced a decision. The Russian government saw itself as the protector of the Slavic peoples. Serbia was Slavic. Russia couldn't allow Austria-Hungary to crush Serbia and expand its influence in the Balkans. On July 30th, Russia ordered a general mobilization of its armed forces. This meant preparing the entire Russian army for war, a massive undertaking that once started was almost impossible to reverse. When Russia mobilized, Germany saw a threat. Russia was mobilizing against Germany. If Russia marched, Germany would have to fight a two-front war against Russia in the east and France in the west. This was the German military's nightmare. Step 4. Germany declares war on Russia. On August 1, 1914, Germany declared war on Russia. Step 5. France gets drawn in. Now Germany faced the two-front war it feared. The only way to win, German military planners believed, was to defeat France quickly and then turn all forces against Russia. To do this, Germany would have to invade France through Belgium. Germany's own territory was bordered by the heavily fortified Maginot Line. On August 3, 1914, Germany declared war on France. German troops began advancing towards Belgium. Step 6. Britain enters the war. Now Britain had to make a choice. Britain had signed treaties guaranteeing Belgian neutrality. Belgium was a small nation, and no one expected Britain would actually fight for it. But treaties matter. Honor matters, and Britain had a strategic interest in preventing any single power from dominating continental Europe. When German troops crossed into Belgium, Britain issued an ultimatum: German withdrawal from Belgium within 24 hours, or war. Germany did not withdraw. On August 4, 1914, Britain declared war on Germany. Within a week of Austria-Hungary's declaration of war on Serbia, the entire continent was at war. France, Britain, Russia, Austria-Hungary, and Germany were all mobilized. Millions of soldiers were marching. Millions more would die. One more nation that would eventually join, Italy, despite being allied with Germany, would join the British and French side in 1915, seeing an opportunity to gain territory from Austria-Hungary. Looking back a century later, we can see how incredibly fragile the peace really was. There were moments, genuine moments, when the slide towards war could have been stopped.
If Austria-Hungary had been more patient, if Russia had not mobilized so quickly, if Germany had counseled restraint instead of encouraging Austria, if Britain had not seen Belgium as worth fighting for, or, most fundamentally, if the leaders of Europe had trusted each other more and feared each other less. But they didn't. The system of alliances, the arms race, the imperial rivalries, the nationalist fervor, all of it was too strong. Once the first domino fell, the others inevitably followed. And that's the lesson of June 28, 1914. Not that one event inevitably causes history, but that structures, systems, and tensions created a world where one event was enough to trigger a catastrophe. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand didn't cause World War I. The assassin's bullet was the spark, but the gunpowder had been accumulating for decades. This is just the beginning of the story. In future episodes, we'll explore the trenches of the Western Front, the rise of new weapons, the strategies of great generals, and the human cost of this conflict. If you want to understand the history that shaped the modern world, subscribe to Talemaster Legend series. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.